This is a production of the Northeast chapters of the CPCU Society. So thank you so much to all of the chapters that contributed to this. I should have written it down. Hopefully I'm not going to forget this. It's New Jersey, Central Jersey, Long Island, New York, Connecticut, Westchester. Did I miss one?
Nope, you got them all.
Okay, I got all. Okay, awesome. So yeah, so this is a production of Northeast Chapters. This is a collaborative regional event. Like I said before, we're going to try and do some more of these into the future as well, kind of pool our resources and our membership base to pull some of these things off. I want to thank Amy so much for making herself available a second time now. If you didn't see her the first go around for our New Jersey and Central Jersey I-Day, she did a presentation for that event, and those videos will be made available. Right now, they're just restricted to folks that registered and paid for the I-Day event, but within probably around Thanksgiving, those videos will then become public on our New Jersey CPCU Society chapter YouTube page. So definitely check that out, and also subscribe, because we also do How to CPCU that airs every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. So without further ado, Amy C. Waninger, CEO at Lead at Any Level, works with organizations that want to build diverse leadership benches strength for a sustainable competitive advantage. She is the author of multiple books, including Network Beyond Bias, Making Diversity a Competitive Advantage for Your Career. Amy is a professional member of National Speakers Association and a Pro-Sci certified change practitioner. Her other credentials include 2 degrees from Indiana University and a World's Best Mom coffee mug, which I'm extremely envious of. She's going to present to us today on building a robust network online. This is actually a presentation that she gave to Microsoft in the very recent past. So without further ado, Amy, take it away.
Thank you so much. And Matthew, do not be jealous of that World's Best Mom coffee mug. The story behind that is only one of my 3 kids ever likes me at once. And I'm pretty sure I had to ask for it at Christmas. So don't even feel bad about that.
Yeah.
So yes, this was a presentation. Thank you for plugging that I got to speak at Microsoft. I've actually been to Microsoft a couple times, and this was one of the presentations I did for them this month. They said, how do we build better networks online? And I was like, you're the biggest tech company in the world. You can't figure that out. But I was happy that, they thought that I might have some insights to share. So I'm going to share this with you today. Hopefully you'll like them too. And for those of you who did attend New Jersey I-Day or who have seen my Network Beyond Bias presentation before, we're going to have a little bit of a review at the beginning. Now, don't go away, because it is good for you to assess your network multiple times throughout the year, not just the one time that you heard me speak. And you might learn something different. You might see some progress along the way. So I want to make sure that that I know that we're reviewing a little bit, but we're going to get into some new content right after that. Fair enough? All right.
Awesome.
Thanks. All right. So networking. How many of you, when you think about networking, think of this guy? I know I used to. Networking used to terrify me. And I remember being on the plane on the way to Hawaii in 2016 with a knot in my stomach, thinking I'm going to have to network with 3,000 insurance people, and I don't know how to do that. Spoiler alert, I figured it out. But I had to really get comfortable, right? With I'm going to walk into this convention hall. I don't know anybody, and I've got to talk to people that I don't know. And the image that I had in my head was kind of this smarmy, salesy, used car guy. And I did not like that feeling at all. And I realized that my values and my expectations were completely out of alignment. That was very difficult for me. And so in any situation where your values and your expectations, or your values and your reality, are out of alignment, you have a choice, right? You can examine your values, or you can examine your expectations. And one of those two is going to have to change, or you're going to, probably be, sick in the bathroom before you go into the thing. And so I didn't want to live like that, right? I didn't want to have knots in my stomach for 5 days. So I thought, well, how am I going to network with people and not feel gross about it? And the answer I came up with was, I'm going to find 3 people I can help every day, because that's how I want to connect with people. That's how I want to make friends and build relationships, is by trying to help people. And so I found people that I could, recommend books to. I even sent a couple people copies of different books that I had read that I thought might help them. I helped, one of the presenters staple papers before their presentation. I asked a question in a really big room full of people who did not want to ask a question, but it was critical to move the speaker forward. So if you've ever been presenting and nobody will ask a question and you really need that question, you know how uncomfortable that can be to have crickets in the whole room while you're on stage. So I got up and I asked a question. It was a simple thing, but it made friends, right? And a lot of you probably I met in Hawaii for the first time. And if not there, then at other CPCU events where I have gotten better at networking. But I'm curious, like, so many of us think of that guy. Why show up at an event? Why give an hour to somebody who's going to talk about networking? What do you want to get out of this today? What are you hoping to see or hear or learn? What questions do you have? And you can use the chat, or you can unmute, or you can send smoke signals, whatever you feel like you need to do. Precious, you've seen me talk way too many times. Why are you here? I'm glad you're here, but why?
I'm about to say, is that my cue to leave?
No,
No.
I love that you're here, but I'm like, aren't you sick of hearing me talk yet?
Never. That's not possible. No, I think that especially, in today's, environment where we're kind of separated, that it's always good to, kind of sharpen your tools and figure out new ways to connect deeper.
Mm-hmm.
So not only was I moved to come hear you speak, but like I said, I brought my work team with me, and also Dallas chapter is here. I see Tony's on, a couple of
Awesome.
other, of our team down here in Dallas is on. But no, you can never have a monopoly on this info. So I'm like, we're just going to go to the pro and figure out how to do this better.
Well, thank you for being here, and thanks for bringing a whole crew. Michelle says she wants to be better at networking. Michelle, I think you're pretty good at networking, but I hope I can help you. Is it Lada says, I want to challenge myself to broaden and diversify my network circles. This will help you with that. Matt said something similar. Where are my blind spots and how do I fix that? And we're going to get there too. All right. So here's what I want you to know. I told you a little bit about my story. I'm finally kind of owning this piece of my story. I don't tell this very often, but when I started to write this book, I did a lot of research around what already existed in the world of diversity, inclusion, and networking, and where was the overlap, and what was I creating? Was I creating something that was different? And I'm going to just claim this. I pioneered this space. I was the first person to write about this topic in this way. I was the first person to say diversity starts with networking, and your network doesn't count if it's not diverse. And a lot of people are talking about it now. But the very first book published on this topic was mine in 2018. And it was all inspired by that 2016 CPCU meeting that I decided I did not want to go to as soon as I stepped on the plane. But I was really glad I went on the way home. So you may have heard, there are a lot of books on networking, and one of them is called Your Network is Your Net Worth. Have you guys ever heard of that book or seen that title or heard that phrase? And, I think it's true, right? The more we invest in our network, the farther we can go in our careers, the more we are capable of, the more opportunities we will have, right? And if you think about your network as an investment, I think it makes sense, because what are you doing? You spend time, you spend money, you spend energy investing in your network, right? You're here today. This may have cost you money. It's definitely costing you an hour of your time. So you need to deposit in this regularly, just like you wouldn't set up your 401k on the first day, put in $50 and then assume that $50 was going to carry you all the way to retirement. But here's the thing. If your network is your net worth, you should not only invest in it, but you should diversify it as much as possible. Because none of us would expect to retire by just investing in one company's stock, even if we did it consistently. And we would miss market opportunities elsewhere. And so I want us to think about, what are the deposits I'm making? Where are they coming from? Who am I investing in? And what opportunities might I be missing by not thinking about it a little bit more strategically? All right, so what are we going to cover today? We're going to talk about networking like a champ. What does that look like? Who do you need in your network? And who is missing from your network? Who is missing from your network is probably one of the most important questions you can ask yourself on a regular basis, because almost all of us are going to get where we want to go with the help of our network. And almost all of us will be challenged to want to go farther with the help of our network. And almost all of us will have opportunities because of our networks. So you can invest in education, and you absolutely should. And you can invest in hard work, and you absolutely should. But if you know a whole lot and you can do a whole lot and nobody knows about it, you're going to be working really hard exactly where you are until you retire, or worse, right? Like, people have to know what you're good at. And so, yes, Amanda, mentors are included in your network, and we're going to get there. Second thing we're going to talk about is virtual networking. How do we network virtually? Because the world changed a few months ago, and we don't get to get on a plane and go to conferences anymore. And we don't get to hug our friends from the CPCU Society like some of us might like. And for some of us, that might be a huge relief that they don't have to hug us anymore. But, networking has changed. It should not stop, because business didn't stop, right? Your careers didn't stop. They might have been put on hold. They might have been redirected a little bit. But time marches on. And if you're not still networking, you are missing the boat. And then finally, we'll talk about how to make meaningful relationships online, because, it's hard, right? It's hard in a business setting to build trust quickly. And then when you don't have the benefit of reading another person's body language, or sitting down at a table and talking with them, or, breaking bread with them, it really is harder. I mean, you're not imagining that. That's real. All right, so let's first talk about networking like a champ. I want you to grab a piece of paper. In front of me, I have this beautiful picture that my daughter colored on. I might use the back of that. I've got a Post-it note. I've got a book I don't like very much. Anything you can find, your electric bill or the envelope that your mortgage came in this week or whatever, grab that, and I want you to draw on it. It's okay. Unless it's your child's drawing and you might get in trouble, don't do that. All right, down the left-hand side, your left, my right, down the left-hand side of the page, I want you to stack the letters of the word champ, CHAMP, right down the side of the page. And then I want you to leave a little bit of space. That space will be important in a moment. Ooh, the tension. And then I want you to, across the top, write the word ignore with 2 G's. I can spell. This is misspelled on purpose. All right. I love it when people tell me that the word ignore is misspelled on my bookmarks and business cards. I'm like, no, it's not. You just have to read the book to find out why. All right. So let's talk about, who do we need to have in our networks? Now, before we start this, I want to say a couple of things. These are like the disclaimers and the rules of the game. Okay. Rule number 1 is, if you think of 3 people, you got to pick one in each category. You can't have 3 people. Okay, just pick one, the one you think of first, the one you know the best, the one you love the most, whatever. This is not like your children, right? They're not going to know. You don't have to tell them. Just pick the first one. If you don't have somebody, just leave it blank. That's okay too. And just know that you may have some work to do, and that's all right. We all start somewhere. Okay, rule number 2 or 3, I lost count, is anything you're about to see, you have the power to change. You don't need your boss's permission. You don't need your spouse's permission. You don't need your pastor's permission. You just go do it. You just go change it, and it's okay. You don't even need Matthew Struck's permission, but don't tell him I said that. All right. Although he would give it to you, I bet. All right. And then the last thing I want to tell you is, the first time I
tell you to say that.
Huh?
Did my wife tell you to say that?
No. I don't think I've met your wife, but I'm sure she and I could talk.
Oh, goodness, no.
I could learn so much about Matthew Struck. All right. So the other thing I want to tell you is, we're not going to cover everything in this assessment, but you're going to get a pretty good idea of where we're headed with this. The first time I took my own assessment, I did not like what I saw at all. I had a network full of people who looked just like me. Any Seinfeld fans in the room? Okay. Those of you who are Seinfeld fans might remember the episode with the Bizarro crew. Like, Elaine goes and finds friends that look just like Jerry and George and Kramer, but they've all got like slightly different names, and they're going to go do something. And George goes, well, I want to come. And Elaine says, well, we already have a George. I'm going to bet you've got a lot of Georges in your network. And it doesn't really do you a whole lot of good to have George over and over again, because George has one perspective and George can probably do one thing for you. Now, you might have 10 Georges and that's okay, but you need to have some other people too. See where I'm going with this? Okay. So the C in CHAMP stands for your customer. If you are working in an agile environment, you might have a very specific notion of the word customer as someone internal to your organization that you collect work from and hand work off to. And that is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about somebody outside your company that does not have access to the same systems, acronyms, and assumptions that you have. Somebody who could, maybe does not, trade money for the goods and services that your company provides. Outside your company is the key for customer. Now, you may not be in a customer facing role. I don't care. Get to know somebody outside your organization that might do business with your company, because you will learn a whole lot about what your company is doing and what they should be doing. Okay. Also, let's say you're a broker, because we have a few of those in the CPCU society. You can't say State Farm because that's a company, not a human being. So it's Jake from State Farm. Okay. All right. H is for someone you've hired or helped get a job. If you're a hiring manager, I want you to put down the name of the last person you hired. Easy peasy. I hope it was easy peasy. If you are not a hiring manager, I want you to put the name of somebody that you've introduced to a hiring manager, introduced to a recruiter that you trust, written a letter of recommendation for. Some meaningful action that took a little bit of effort on your part, right? Not like you clicked like on something on Facebook that they wrote. That does not count. Some meaningful action to help people get a job. Now, I was going to call this recommend or refer, but I'm betting nobody wants to network like a cramp. That was a joke, Rita. You're allowed to laugh.
I got it.
All right. You're kind of looking at me like that wasn't funny.
No. I was thinking about the name that's going in this box.
Okay, perfect. All right. The A is for an associate. And an associate is somebody, maybe in your company, maybe not, that you have about the same level of responsibility, same level of authority, right? Somebody you bounce ideas off of, or you kind of pace with, or you're kind of like secretly competing with, but you have a good relationship with. And in this case, I picked Raj. Raj is somebody that I interviewed at a healthcare conference a few weeks ago. All right. The M is for your mentor. So I think it was Amanda asked about mentor. Amanda, if you got one, put it in the box. So your mentor might be somebody assigned to you from work or from the CPCU Society. If you didn't know, the CPCU Society has a very robust mentoring program. They will match you up. It's a great way to make friends and meet people from all across the world. But if you don't have somebody formally assigned to you, think about, who do you look to for advice in your career? Is there somebody that when they speak, you listen and you go try to do the thing that they said to do? And if so, put their name down. And if that's somebody you know personally, tell them, because it would be a real shame if they had this amazing impact on your life and they never found out about it. How sad would that be? If it's not somebody you know personally and you're having trouble with this one, think about, whose books do you read? Whose podcasts do you listen to? Whose blog do you follow? That counts too. One good thing about 2020 is we get to choose our mentors from across all of time and space, because anybody with a public body of work has made their knowledge available to us, often for free. So think about, where do you go for information about your career, about your industry, about your company, and put that person's name down. The P is for your protege. And a protege is somebody that you see them and you say, ooh, they're going places and I want to help them get there. Not because it's good for you, not because they're paying you, but because it's good for them. And you want to see them succeed, and you want to see them not make the same mistakes you made. You want to help them get there just 5 minutes faster. Okay. All right. So quick show of hands, or put it in the chat. How many people do you have right now on your Champ Network tool? I have 5. If it's 1, please use your index finger. Thank you, Jessica. All right, I'm seeing some 5s and some 4s and some 1s. It's okay. If you have everybody, great. If you don't, I want you to think about where can you go to find these people? Can you do a ride along with a salesperson so you can connect with some customers? Can you, go search LinkedIn for somebody who has an open to work circle around their face and connect them with a job posting in your organization? Can you make a friend at work? Can you talk to somebody about, hey, I love where you are and I love how you got there and I admire you as a person and I'd like some help? Can you look around you and find somebody who may look to you as a future version or a future possibility for themselves? Now, you may be 5 minutes out of college. That's no excuse, because there's somebody who hasn't graduated yet who needs you. If all you know how to do is read and fill out a job application, you can help somebody. So no excuses. All right. So now let's talk about what perspectives does your network ignore? Because this is huge, right? We don't want a whole network full of Georges, especially if we're George. All right. So if the person is in a different industry than you, and I'm going to tell you right now, I messed this up because Aisha is actually newly in my industry. But so I have 4. If the person's in a different industry from you, so outside the insurance industry, in your case, put an X next to their name in the I column. All right. I have 4. I lied on my form, but I have 4. I'm telling the truth now. How many do you have outside your industry? 1, 4, 0. How many of you know Tony Conyas? Have heard his name? Tony Conyas forever has 0 people outside the insurance industry on his list, and I have made it my singular mission in life to introduce him to someone outside the insurance industry that he will invite into his inner circle, because it is good for him to talk to people outside of the insurance industry. Okay. But what we need to do is we need to find out who knows stuff we don't know. And a lot of that knowledge is outside of our own industry. And as I was telling the Boston chapter yesterday, there are really good people worth knowing who work in other parts of the economy. So it's okay to get out there and talk to them. Like, nobody's going to judge you for that. All right. G, the first G is for different generation than you. So if the person's at least, let's say 10 years older or at least 10 years younger than you, put an X in the G column. Where are my Gen Xers at? It's the only time being Gen X will work to your advantage in your whole entire life. You're welcome. All right. In this case, I have 3. I have 3. Actually, Aisha might be younger than me, so I have 4 again, but I don't exactly know. But let's say I have 3. How many do you have? 5. Wow. I'm seeing some head shakes and people don't want to put their hands up, and that's okay. All right. We need to get outside of our own generation. We need to talk to people who have more experience than we do. And so that way we can see trends and cycles, right? They see trends and cycles where we do not. Think about your first couple of years in the insurance industry. If bonuses were really good, and then the next year bonuses were really bad, you probably looked at somebody who had been in the industry for a while and say, what happened? Right? I thought we were getting great bonuses every year, and this year is not so great. And then you learned about underwriting cycles, right? You remember that year? Most of us do. All right. But we also need to connect with people who are much younger than us, because they see the world so much differently, and the way they want to consume goods and services and interact with companies is different, probably, from the way we do. The way they want to be employed and engage with employers is different, probably, than the way we do. And if we don't keep tabs on what's going on with people who are much younger than us, who are just entering the workforce, as the economy and the workplace changes to meet their needs and demands, what happens to us? We become obsolete. All right. You do not have to share any more numbers with me, because I'm getting ready to get into some topics that might be a little sensitive. Okay. All right. The next one is for gender identity different from yours. Let me explain. I am a cisgender woman. And what that means is, when I was born, the doctors looked and said, it's a girl. And they were right. That's not everyone's experience. So I would put an X next to anyone who's not a cisgender woman like me. So trans women, trans and cisgender men, and non-binary individuals would get an X in my grid. Okay. Now, why is it important for me to have men in my network? Well, 96% of Fortune 500 CEOs are white men. 70% of Fortune 500 leadership teams, senior leadership teams, are white men. If I want access to decisions, human resources, budget, meeting rooms, or a badge to get in the front door, I probably need to know a man to get that to happen. On the other hand, I think, and I hope some of the men that know me who are on this call will back me up on this, I think the men in my network benefit from knowing me too. Because I can tell them what it's like to be a woman in their industry or in their company or on their team. And I can help them see things and know things that happen when they're not around. Because people say things to me they don't say to the men that I work with. Right? Now, just like I want men advocating for me where I can't be in the room, I need to be an advocate too. And this is where it's important for me to have trans and non-binary people in my network. Because if I didn't, I wouldn't know how painful it is for people to try to get a job only to be discriminated against because their gender identity doesn't match what's on their ID. I wouldn't know how terrifying it is to go for a job interview and not know if you're going to be harassed or assaulted for using a public restroom. I wouldn't know how dehumanizing it is to be asked to pick male or female on a form when you are neither or both, but you can only choose one of two limited options. And if people can't get in the front door, how can they ever get to the room where decisions are being made? So if I can help make some decisions that make it easier for folks to get in the front door, then hopefully they can get to those rooms and they can make it easier for the ones who come behind. So as a woman, in some cases, I lack privilege, right? But as a cisgender woman, I have a lot of privilege. As a white woman, I have even more privilege, and I'll get to that in a second. All right. The N is for national origin or native language different from yours. Now, this is an area where I need to be more intentional in my network, and I'm trying to do so. I've been reaching out. I do a podcast. I think I mentioned this earlier. I do a podcast, and I'm trying to reach out to more people who are from outside the United States that I can interview for my podcast, because that helps me get to know them and kind of promote their work. So that's an area where I'm really working hard. But it's good for us to get outside of our own bubble, right? And if you still live, yes, Martin, UK English counts because you have a different worldview. You definitely have a different worldview, right? Some of the assumptions that we make as Americans do not hold up under the scrutiny of people from outside the US. In fact, a lot of them. The podcast I was just on, I was with a gentleman from Nigeria, and he's like, wow, you're really an American. I'm like, what did I say? Right? Because I was making an assumption that I didn't even know I was making. And so, it's good to have these conversations and to bring these things out into the open so we know, where are we assuming and where are we kind of universally on the same page? All right. The O is for sexual orientation different from yours. Now, some of you may say, well, somebody's sexual orientation is really none of my business, Amy. Okay. Do you have a picture of your family on your desk at work? Because I have a lot of friends who are afraid to do that. Other people say, well, I don't have anything against people from the LGBTQ community, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer. And then there's some other letters after that, I and A, which is intersex and asexual. And I think there's like a few more letters beyond that. We're getting to an alphabet here. But the point is, I don't have any problem with those people. I just don't work with anybody like that. Ooh, do I have some hard truth for you? 47% of LGBTQ workers are not out at work because they fear being ostracized from their teams, being alienated by their managers, being fired from their jobs. And even though there was a Supreme Court decision this summer that said, oh, we can't fire people for that anymore, There are more court cases coming that could undo that decision. We are not out of the woods yet. And so, if you don't know what it's like to have your right to have your job or your right to have your family up for public debate, I would encourage you to take a listen to some folks that deal with that every day. But, the other thing is, I'm not asking you to go to work and say, oh, we should really talk about what's everyone's gender identity and sexual orientation. That would be a great icebreaker for Tuesday. Don't do that. What I'm asking you to do is get to know people personally, right? And then when something is said, or when you have a chance to speak up as an ally, use it. Because the people in your office who are wondering if you're safe to come out to can definitely hear the difference between, my brother came over the other week. He brought his boyfriend. And we had the best weekend with my brother and his boyfriend. Now, I know you can hear the difference. I guarantee the people in your office who need to hear the difference are listening for it. Okay. The R is for race or ethnicity different from yours. Now, we got a long history in this country about who can own property. And for 256 years, who could be property. And then after that, who could own property and who could rent property. And then after that, who could own property and where they could own it. And I'm not just talking about the South where Jim Crow was the law. I'm also talking about the North where redlining and housing discrimination were policy. And for 401 years, from even before we were a country, we have been set up systemically to not see each other, to not be friends, to not be neighbors. 75% of white people do not have a black friend. And that means 75% of white people are lying about having that black friend. We need to do better. And the one place we can do better is at work, because if our communities are segregated, then so are our schools and so are our churches. And work is probably the most integrated place most of us go. So if we're not building these relationships there, we're probably not building them at all. Now, all right, I want to talk to the white folks for just a minute. You may not like that label, but you know who you are. If you're white and you're in an organization that is predominantly white, you may think of yourself as a well-meaning white person. And as a well-meaning white person, you don't want to say something, right? You don't want to go strike up a conversation with the only black woman in the office because you might say the wrong thing, heaven forbid, and embarrass yourself and hurt someone's feelings. And then I want you to think about every white person in the office thinks they're a well-meaning white person. And that one black woman in your department never has anybody stop by and ask how her weekend was, and never gets invited out for coffee, and never gets invited out to lunch. And if you're seeing that happen, you need to make it your job to fix it. Because if well-meaning people say nothing, who are these folks left with? I know a lot of people who are onlys in their teams, onlys in their departments, onlys in their companies, onlys at certain echelons of their companies. That's a very isolating and horrifying experience. And I wouldn't want to work somewhere where nobody talked to me. And I'm sure you wouldn't either. So let's make it our job to fix that. Okay. All right. CHAMP is for the depth of your network. The first 6 letters of IGNORE are about the breadth of your network. E, I'll get to what it stands for in a minute, but E is about the depth of your relationships. E is for exchange of stories. So if you have shared stories with the people on your list about times when you struggled, times when your values were put to the test, those defining moments in your life where maybe you made the right choice, but maybe you didn't. If those are the kinds of stories you've exchanged with those folks, put an X in that column. Because those are the deep relationships. Those are the relationships that are going to carry you from where you are. Sorry about my dog. From where you are to where you're going. Those are the people that 20 years from now, you're still going to be friends with. You're still going to call up if there's an open spot in your team. They're still going to call you. If you've been in your career for any length of time, you know that the people you still talk to from 5 jobs ago are the ones that you exchange these kinds of stories with, because that's how we build relationships. Now, there is no right number of X's for anyone's grid, but you probably have a feeling about what you're looking at. And if you're feeling pretty good, good for you. You are definitely one of a few. And if you're not feeling good about what you're looking at, I want you to think about, what can I do to change this? Because there's not a single part of this you don't have the power to change. All right. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. I would love to, I will try to read those as we go through. Let's talk about virtual networking. Where are the places people are? Like, how do you talk to people now? Right? We are on a virtual event. How many of you looked up who was going to be here and tried to connect with them before the event? Nope. All right. Usually you can find out who's on the invite. And if you do, look them up on LinkedIn. Hey, I'm looking forward to meeting you on Friday at this great event that the Northeast chapters are putting on. What are you hoping to get out of it? Is there somebody there you'd like to meet that I can introduce you to? Right? These are easy things that we can do. So connect before, connect during. One of the most powerful things you can do during an event, and I saw Matthew already did this for me, so thank you, but I'm going to do it again, is in the chat. What I will do, especially if I'm not presenting, is I'll put a note in the chat that says, hey, if anybody would like to connect with me after, here's my LinkedIn link. And I put my LinkedIn link right in the chat, which I think I did correctly. Yep. And people will click it and then they will go connect with me online. And I would encourage all of you, put your LinkedIn link in the chat. Because then after the meeting, you can download the chat. You'll have everybody's LinkedIn and you can go connect with them. And you say, hey, wasn't that an amazing presentation Amy gave today? What did you take away from it? I would love to talk to you some more about this topic or some other topic, right? Like you can kind of choose your own adventure from here on out, but it's hard to do that if you don't connect in the first place. And then after, go follow up with people, talk to them. One of my favorite tools, and I learned this one from Tony Kanyas, is have a link where people can book time right on your calendar. You can do this for free with Calendly or Acuity Scheduling or 100 other tools that are just like them. Calendly, by the way, is a Black-owned tech company, so I always mention them first. But you can use a link like that and say, hey, if you want to meet, if you want to just chat, grab 15 or 30 minutes on my calendar and let's talk. We'll talk about whatever you want to talk about or just get to know each other. It's also a really good way to avoid the calendar battleship that a lot of us end up playing when we're trying to make meetings with people outside of our own organizations. So, I mean, really, like if you take nothing else away, just go get a Calendly link and it will make your life easier. But, you know, keep following up with people, right? And check in with them periodically and make sure that, you know, oh, I see there's another event next month. Are you planning to attend that? Do you know anybody there? Do you know the speaker? Are they any good? Are they as good as Amy? Probably not. All right. Sorry, I'm being silly now. It's late on a Friday. All right. Let's talk about where people are when they're not in meetings, as if that time exists right now. They're everywhere, right? And so, you know, where do you live online? Do you live on Facebook? Do you live on LinkedIn? Do you live on Twitter? There are new ones that I don't know the names of, but people younger than me probably know the names of those things. I know Instagram is a thing, but I almost refuse to get on it because I just can't do anything else. Microsoft Teams, TikTok, like there's all these places, right, where people go online. And so think about, where do you like to live online and can you connect with people there? And how are you presenting yourself when you're in those spaces? I was talking to Precious this morning on a completely different topic, and she was talking about branding yourself is a 24/7 job. And it doesn't mean you have to be doing it 24/7. It means whatever you do 24/7 has an impact on your brand. And I thought that was a really brilliant way of putting it. So make sure that when you're out in the wild, you're conducting yourself appropriately, because there are no secrets and nothing ever goes away. Somebody can screenshot what you just did in a heartbeat. And, you know, now your whole reputation is lost, right? Okay. Microsoft Teams or this was the Microsoft presentation. I actually had to take the Zoom window picture out and put the Microsoft Teams presentation in, which I thought was really funny. I was like, do you guys have any stock photos of Teams meetings? Because I don't think I should show up with a Zoom image on my they were happy to provide that for me. So I left it in because kudos to Microsoft for paying my salary this month. But, you know, the great thing about these meetings is we can see each other's faces. We can see each other's names. And that makes it much easier to connect later, right? Because you know you got the right Sally Jones on LinkedIn because you just saw Sally Jones's beautiful face, and she probably shares that name with 400 other Sally Joneses in the major metropolitan area, right? Okay, so now that we've connected with people before, during, and after our events, how do we build relationships? Because just sending a LinkedIn request does not a friendship make, right? Here's the thing. You can't get work done faster than you can trust people. It does not happen in business, right? If you've got a team, a new team, and you've got a job to do, no work gets done until people start to trust each other. And the more trust you have, the faster you can move together. And the problem with all of this online networking is, you know, when you don't have FaceTime with somebody, and I'm not talking about FaceTime the app, I'm talking about like really sitting down and getting to know somebody, right? Shaking their hand and looking them in the eye, it is harder to build trust because there's a whole lot of kind of vibe, right, that we get with somebody when we're sitting with them. And there's a whole lot of eye contact we can make, and we tell different stories, right? It's just different. That's okay, but be aware of it. You're going to have to work a little bit longer to build that kind of trust. I don't know who the host is, but if you can mute,
I am
do a mute all.
I'm checking, Amy.
Thank you, Rita. I appreciate it. Sure. I don't want to let anybody's private conversation seep in by accident.
Sounds like Marcia, doesn't so.
So yeah, you can only work at the speed of trust, right? And remember, your whole career is in front of you still. Everything that's left for you in your career is still in front of you. So don't rush this. You've got time. Okay. I talked about this a little bit earlier about telling stories is a good way to connect with people. Something happens to our brains chemically when we start to tell stories with one another. Our mirror neurons are activated, so we will actually subconsciously change our body language. We will change our posture. We will change our facial expressions to connect with the person, to match the person who's telling us a story. Chemically, though, I believe it's the serotonin that gets kind of pumped out a little faster when we're hearing a story. So we actually feel more empathy. We feel closer to the person. We get kind of the warm fuzzies, right? Stories build trust. We all know trust builds relationships, and relationships make or break careers. So the more you can tell your story, times when you struggled, times when you needed help, times when you were challenged, times when you were wrong and you learned something, the more the people who are following you can relate to you, the more they can see themselves in your story, the more invested they are in your success. And this is how we build trust with teams. It's by getting people to invest in our collective success. Does this make sense? Okay, I'm seeing some nods and only a couple of skeptical looks. And a few of you might be asleep, but you've got your cameras off, so I'll never know. All right. But let me say this again because it's important. Stories build trust. Trust builds relationships, and relationships make or break careers. So if you go backwards, right? If you want to be successful in your career, you need strong relationships. If you want strong relationships, you must build them on a foundation of trust. And if you want to accelerate trust, you need to tell the kinds of stories that people can connect with. All right. So here are some prompts. I'm going to stop and read them because you're reading them now. The first is share a story from your childhood, teenage years, or early adulthood that was a defining moment for you. What brought you to the crossroads? What core values drove your decision? What did you learn about yourself? And when was the last time you told this story? The second prompt is Talk about a time you've struggled financially, academically, professionally, or personally. Who helped you? What mistakes did you make? What did you learn? Do you now view this struggle as a source of embarrassment or a source of pride? I recommend the first story, the story in red, or the first prompt, for people who are not yet in leadership roles, because this is a really good way to connect with people generally. I recommend the second story, the one in blue, or the second prompt, the one in blue, for people who are in leadership roles and need folks to get on board with their initiatives. Because when people understand that you struggled, they understand how they can help. It humanizes you in a way that connects people to you and your goals. The first prompt is one that I used to use in interviews to get to know the people I was interviewing better, because I knew on day one when they started what was important to them, what they valued, what motivated them, and it helped us get off on the right foot faster. Excuse me 1 second. I'm going to ask my child to take my dog out. Sorry, because he's making some noise and I don't want that to be distracting. Okay. All right, moving on. Okay, so I'm seeing a question. What's the easiest way to bridge the language barrier? Okay, so here's a technology thing. You guys can see on the bottom of my screen, or on the bottom of your screen, I guess, that my words are being picked up by PowerPoint, and it's doing a live closed captioning thing as I'm talking. Here's something cool. You can actually go into PowerPoint and you can change the display language of that text, and it will translate for you in real time. Would you like to see that?
Yes.
It's really cool. All right, somebody name a language that they know so they can verify that I'm doing this the right way.
Spanish.
Spanish, that's an easy one. Okay, so if I go into subtitle settings and I click more settings, and I've got a video on how to do this on LinkedIn somewhere. Yes, Nick, I see you, but I can't stop because I'm presenting. You're gonna have to give me just a moment. I'm sorry. Let's see. I will select the Spanish language for my prompts. All right. Now, not only is this great for people who have hearing problems, and I have used it for, I try to always remember. I don't always remember, but I try really hard to remember. This is free technology you already have if you have PowerPoint. But I've had people thank me because they have hearing problems and they don't always catch what speakers are saying, especially, with hearing aids and headphones and all of that, right? Sometimes, and someone in the chat said that they have difficulty hearing and this helps. I'm so glad. Although I hope you can both hear and speak, or can both read and speak Spanish, or you don't know that I just acknowledged you and I'm sorry. Let me go back to English. Hold on 1 second as I move screens around. And Martin, I'm sorry to say that it doesn't translate from American English to UK English. So you'll have to get somebody to fill you in later on all the stuff that I said. All right. So that's one way we can get past language barriers. Another way we can do that is with Google Translate. I worked with some people in a different country for a while, and I had no idea they didn't speak English because they did this monumental task of putting everything that I wrote to them into Google Translate and then typing their response and then Google translating it back to English and sending it back to me. And I did not know for weeks until I called somebody on the phone that they didn't speak a word of English. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's like ridiculous that I didn't know that. But what an amazing thing to be able to do. So hopefully some of this will help. Okay. Can hear English. That's good. Okay. Pictures work well too. Yes, pictures work. Emojis work. Emojis are kind of the language of the future. In a lot of ways, young people can't read. So, emojis are great. And here's something. Young people cannot read cursive. So if you want to keep a secret from your kids, write it in cursive. If you want to keep a secret from the Gen Zers in your office, write it in cursive. Don't do that. That would not be very inclusive, but it's true. Like they can't. I have people that I sometimes will post pictures of cards that people have written to me. And then I've been reminded to put in alt text, not just for people who use screen readers, but also for people under the age of like 38 because they didn't learn how to read cursive in school. Let's see. Okay, so I'm just scrolling real quick for questions. Sean, did I answer your language barrier question? Can you? The other thing you can do is make a game of it, right? Like bring somebody along that can translate, or, just spend some time learning another language. All right, great. And Sean, you called me ma'am. That makes me feel very old. Okay, but I'm going to forgive you for that because I'm very old. All right.
Well, maybe he's from Texas and he's being Southern.
Yes, that's a Southern thing, and not being Southern myself. Yes, man, I'm Southern. It's a Southern thing, absolutely. And so, yes, it's funny how in different regions of the country, different things are considered polite, right? So, if you're in New York and you talk fast and you get out of people's way, that's polite because you don't want to waste anyone's time. In the South, if you talk quickly, you're being rude, and you want to spend time with people and slow down, right? In the South, you say ma'am, and in the North, we feel old. So that's okay too. I'm trying to learn some of my biases. All right. So here's the thing I'd like for you to do, whether you've done this with me before or not. I want you to imagine that you've got a hula hoop around you. Push your seat back a little bit, get on the edge of your seat. And yeah, I don't know what's polite in Jersey, Rick, but I've been there a few times. I haven't found anything yet. I've tried. I almost got escorted out of a place for asking for directions in New Jersey one time. I was like, I just don't know where I'm supposed to go. They did not want me in there. And it was a gas station. Like, where are you supposed to go to ask directions? Anyway, I want you to imagine that there's this hula hoop around you. Now, a lot of us, when we think about diversity and inclusion, we think about networking, we try to think about all these big, huge problems we have. But I want you to imagine that there's this 3-foot space around you that you are singularly responsible for. And that is your first area of responsibility. And if you can imagine that circle around you and you can make that circle an inclusive space, you can take that with you everywhere you go. And when people see it, they will see your example. They will want to be part of your inner circle. Your sphere of influence will expand. And even more than they already do today, people will see you as a leader, and not just any leader, but the kind of leader they want to follow. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Amy. Does anyone have any last minute questions, comments, anything like that? The one thing I did raise up in the chat, Amy, is have you ever used apps for networking beyond like LinkedIn? So like the one I use is Shaper, and it kind of works almost like a dating app where you get to put in, who you would like to connect to, whether it's tech people or finance people and things like that, and it allows you to look at industry and region. And you could do like the swipe right, swipe left kind of thing, see who wants to connect, and then you can email and virtual chat and stuff. So that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know if there
I'm
are
going to
any
write
others
that
like
one down. I've not used that one.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people use, it's WhatsApp. WhatsApp is kind of the international networking platform that it drives me crazy. Like my attention span's too short, and I'm just like, I can't do it. I just can't do it. I'm really good at LinkedIn. LinkedIn is about the right attention span for me.
Yeah.
I've made some really good I've built some really strong relationships on Twitter. I've done business with people, like big business deals, big for me, right? I'm a one-woman shop. But I've done deals with people on Twitter that I have only interacted with on Twitter. And in fact, I got hired from Microsoft because of a relationship on Twitter that I didn't even know I had, but somebody had been following me for a while. So like, I kind of stick with what works for me and what I'm good at, and everybody's kind of got their own jam. And like I said, I'm kind of getting too old for like whatever the next technology is. Like I can't learn anything else. So I'm going to have to be more intentional about connecting with people who are younger in different ways that I can keep up with.
Yeah, no, that's there's a ton of different like new options, but look, I've said it before. You'll probably be a proponent of this. Like, if you have a choice of doing everything mediocre, two or three things well, like choose the 2 or 3 things. Like, stay in your lane and keep working at it until it doesn't work anymore. So, but Yeah, no, any other questions, concerns, comments, anything like that? I think Rita is just making sure to finalize if she knows who everyone is, just so you can get CEs for CPCU if you are a CPCU.
Thank you, Rita.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
and Rita, do we have any? I know so everyone is more than welcome to stick around. We have happy hour networking, open conversation afterward.
Look at
So
that, networking right here
Yeah.
online.
Yes.
Yes. Is this replacing the usual one?
the usual what? The usual happy hour?
Yeah, there's one every Friday with the CPCU group. So
What?
It starts at 5.
Yes, yeah. We are the pre-party. So if you would like to pre-party with us, you are more than happy to. I don't have my wine glass, but I assure you there's not coffee in my cup right now.
And don't worry about the recording. Matt is the one who edits, so I know that part will get edited out. We're not going to record the networking.
All right, perfect. And I'm assuming that you can use breakout groups for networking as well. Do you guys ever do that?
If people like to, yes.
So
Yeah,
I did that with the Boston chapter. Was anybody on the Boston, what was it, Boston, Central Mass, Rhode Island I-Day yesterday?
no.
So what we did, I produced that for them because they were a little nervous about it. And we started with networking. So I created virtual tables. And as people came in, I randomly assigned them to a virtual table. And there were like up to 6 people in a breakout room. And that was their virtual table. And they spent 10 minutes there. And then they came back and they got shuffled up again and sent to new tables. And we did that a few times. And they liked it because they had a lot of new designees and a lot of people who were not necessarily active in the chapter, but they were trying to kind of, get to know better and create some space for. And it gave the officers a chance to kind of connect with people, small group. And it also gave people a chance to kind of connect individually and meet each other or reconnect. So the breakout rooms can be a really good thing. And you can set a timer on the breakout rooms and just tell everybody, like, we're going to send everybody into breakout rooms. You'll be back in 10 minutes. And it just kind of handles it for you.
I can do that. I've got
It's
the option.
really cool. It's really cool.
If you want to try and engineer that one, Rita, I'm on board with that. This is
Okay.
like